Thank you, Charlotte. It's wonderful to be with you guys today. I hope you are all well. I know that many of you have had a big part in helping us get to this point, the Extension Gardener Handbook, and it's fun to be here to celebrate with you. The most important question that gardeners have to answer is what plant and where do I put it? And that derives everything else you experience as a gardener, all the impacts of your garden on the community and on the environment, whether it's going to thrive or whether it will struggle, whether you're going to need to add lots of fertilizer and pesticides, whether it's going to meet many functions for you, like songbird habitat or fragrance and color. All of these things are a very complex thing to try and get a handle on, and that's why we created the Toolbox. So the Toolbox has three major functions. It helps you find the right plant for the right place. It helps you identify a plant based on information that you have. And we have a design gallery that helps, that lets you see that plant in the environment, so you can see how it looks with other plants.
Lucy, I'm sorry, we've got a couple of requests if you can either increase volume or move a little closer to the mic.
All right, how's that?
Does that sound good to you guys? It sounds good to me.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me know, and stop me again if I get soft, so be sure you handle it. This has been a multi-year project, and we've had a big investment from Extension Administration and also from the Center for IPM to help fund staff time to work on it, to help fund the IT development that went into creating the mechanics of it. We've had work study students who've been a part of helping us get the data in straight. And we also got funding to purchase video for agents to create video plant profile. We have lots of fabulous partners in this, and these partners have contributed images, they've contributed data, they have contributed a lot of thought that went into what are the things that this tool could do that other tools don't already do, and even some of the actual mechanics of doing it. So we've been very fortunate to have strong partners. Kathleen's going to take you on a tour and show you.
Okay. Can everybody hear my screen? I'm hearing some feedback from microphones. I don't know if, Charlotte, if you could maybe mute. I think some people might be off mute.
I'm getting that too, but everybody is muted, so I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, I did the same. I scanned. I can't find anybody.
Okay.
I'm muted.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just forage forward then. So this is the plant toolbox, and I'm wondering if maybe it's me. I don't know, or Lucy maybe. I'm not sure. We'll see if it keeps going, but this is the Extension Gardener Plant Toolbox. Lucy had the URL up on the other screen, so we encourage you to go ahead and bookmark that. It's plants.ces.ncsu.edu, and you'll notice as you visit the toolbox throughout the year that our title bar changes to different photos up here, and that's to remind you that gardening happens all year. It's a seasonal thing, and we want to be cognizant of that as we choose our plants, our right plant for the right place, that we're thinking about it seasonally, not only from a aesthetic perspective, but also just from a perspective of having plants that are supporting our ecosystem and our pollinators, and also looking great. So I encourage you to take a moment to kind of poke around the homepage. There's a lot of really great information on here. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the homepage, but we do have featured plants that cycle through. We've got great help pages, glossary, help with any kind of questions you might have as you use the toolbox. We list our partners. And we also have something called quick plant lists. And so these are popular searches that folks do. And we decided to go ahead and make them kind of quick lists that folks can click on. So those are over on the side, and those might change as we hear from our users what people might like. So up at the top of the toolbox, you'll see a search bar and this kind of gray, navigation bar. And in the top right is a search bar. So you can type in the name of the plant. If you know the Latin name or the common name of the plant, you can start typing it in. And you'll notice that a menu kind of pops down that shows you some possible fill-in options. This is not all of the options. As you see, it gives you a lot of Acer options if you're looking for a maple. So if you see the one you're looking for, you can certainly click on it here. But you can also just see what we have for the whole genus and type it in. And as you can see, we have 57 plants in that genus. So we're able to search by Latin name. We're also able to search by common name. So that three-toothed trident that we just saw, the three-tooth trident maple, you can also search by common name if that's what you know, and it will take you to the plant record. So our plant records have a lot of really great information, and we'll kind of run through those as I show you some of the tools on how to get to these plants. So it's great if you know the name of the plant or you know the Latin name of the plant and you can find what you're looking for. But a lot of times folks don't really know what they're looking for. They're trying to fill in a gap in their landscape, and they want something that's going to be the right plant for the right place. So up in this top toolbar here in the gray, you'll see that this navigation, and there are options for you to choose what you would like to do. So the first one we're going to look at is find a plant. If we click on that, we get this kind of green bar come up, and you'll know that you're in the find a plant section of the toolbox. And on the left, you'll see that there are lots and lots of menu options that you can choose from that help you decide what plant you're looking for. So there are little gray down arrows that if you click on, those menus open up with more options. This is kind of designed like Amazon or some of the other powerful search engines, where you can kind of decide what features matter to you and click and see what some of the options are. And as you choose, your list over here is going to get smaller. So we have 4,364 and growing number of records on the toolbox. And so when you first start out, you have all of the plants available to you. And then as you choose, different features, then these plants will go away. So if we want to find a native plant, you'll notice that we have lots and lots of different plant types to choose from, not only trees, shrubs, and ground covers, but we now have weeds, vegetables, turf grasses, ornamentals, natives. We've added in house plants. So when I click on native plants, I've now reduced the number down to 995 from the 4,300. And now all of my clicks are going to be based on these 995 plants. I'm going to keep whittling down from there. So I would like a native plant that's also a tree. So again, I'm whittling it down a bit. So we're down. And maybe I live in the mountains, a mountainous region of North Carolina. So we've got region-specific designations for plants. Maybe I have a lot of deer browsing in my yard. So I'm going to come down to this landscape section. Resistant to challenges, we've got lots of different challenges that plants might be resistant to. Things like drought or dry soil or poor soil or rabbits or compaction, things that are common issues in the landscape that you might want to find plants that are going to be resistant to those things. We can come down here to maybe I want a flowering tree. I want something, I want a tree, but I want it to be flowering. So I want a kind of a design feature that's a flowering tree. And maybe I want something, you can see now my list is getting smaller. Maybe I want something that has some good fall color to it. So you can come down here to leaves, and we've got deciduous fall color, and maybe I want something that's red. And so now I'm down, you know, down to just a few options, and I can kind of browse these, and these would all fit all of these categories. If any of them I decide, yo, I made my list too small, you can simply click off the item, and your list will grow larger. So it's a you don't lose your other search feed. I browse through, this one looks interesting. Let's click here on the sourwood tree, and you'll see when you get to a record, we've got a lot of really great information here. One of the things that that when we polled people about what should we add to the toolbox, they said we definitely want to have Latin pronunciations. So I'm not sure if you guys will be able to hear this. But trust me, if you go to the toolbox and you click on this little speaker, you will hear the Latin recording of the name. We also have the phonetic spelling for those that are hard of hearing as well. We do list synonym names in a record. So if you were to use an old name, a name that is no longer popular, or if a name has changed because of new genetics, I'm just simply copying and pasting here. If you do use a synonym name, it will bring you to the correct record. So even if you're using an old name, you'll still get the into the right place. We have a description that kind of walks you through the plant and its highlights and its cultural practices that need to be followed. And then over here on the right, you will see great photos. And our goal is to show people the plant throughout the year, throughout the seasons, as well as showing them you know, beautiful pictures of it in flower, but also showing some detailed photos of the stems, the leaf attachments, things that could help with identification of the plant, and really give them a good view of the plant. You'll notice that we have had some really great contributions from some of our master gardeners. And so when we're adding in photos from master gardeners, we're specifically mentioning which season it was taken and in which county, so that you can be aware of, well, this is what it looks like, you know, in the Piedmont in the fall. I wonder what it'll look like for me on the coast, but it'll give you a little more information. So we've got really good information. A lot of the plants do have short videos. So these were created by our extension agents. So that's Allison Arnold right there talking to us about sourwood trees. So we have over 700 plants on the toolbox that do have a video as a part of them, and we'd love to increase that to be more, but it's just a little vignette and walks you through the plant and really gives you a good idea of what the plant's all about.
Can you show how they can make that full size?
Oh, yep, and you can make it full size. Yep. Yep, you can make it bigger. We do list cultivars and varieties as well. And if a cultivar or variety happens to be a plant record in our toolbox, we can also link out to that record right here. You would see a little thumbnail picture to link out to it. So there's a lot of cross-clicking. And then as you scroll down, don't forget to scroll down in the toolbox. Here's all the meat of the record. We've got just really great information about the plant, its wildlife value, you know, if it's particularly resistant to something, really detailed information about the flowers and the fruits and the leaves and the bark. All of that great information for landscape design. And if there is information, if it is a poisonous plant, we include that as well. And so all of these are data points. This is what helps drive that search engine that you saw us using, that clicking menu. And so this is what we capture to be able to kind of navigate people to different plants, but it is a lot of really detailed information about the plant. So I encourage you to scroll down. So gets you to use the features that you're looking for, the cultural requirements in your yard, how much sun, what your soil type is, how much space you have to plant, to find a plant that's going to work well for your location. So our second section is the identify a plant. This works very similarly to the find a plant. You'll see identify a plant come up here at the top in green, and then you'll have some different options on the left, different than what, some are the same, but a lot of them are different as to what you can choose. So if you have a person that comes into your clinic, or your neighbor says, hey, can you help me ID this plant? Or you find a plant in your yard and you're saying, well, it's got a purple flower and it's blooming right now. You know, you can click in all of the information that you do have on the plant. Identify the leaf arrangement. Maybe it has opposite leaves. Maybe there are some hairs on the leaves. It can kind of bring down your list of what you're looking at to a more reasonable level. So this identify a plant is not meant to be a dichotomous key, and we are still working on fleshing out all of the data records so that this identify a plant works better. But it is a tool that can maybe get you pointed in the right direction, maybe get you on the right path for helping you to ID a sample that you're looking at. So let's just take a look here at this anise hyssop. So we've come down, we think, yep, this might be it. You can look at all the photos again. And that really helps. And again, we're trying to show people seedling photos. What does it look like when it's just coming up out of the ground? So that you can look at that versus is this a weed, or is this a plant I want to keep? Really looking at the leaf margins for ID and how it's attached to the stem, all sorts of things that help with ID. So one of the things that we didn't see in the last record is see this plant in the following landscapes. So this actually segues us very neatly into our third section of the toolbox, which is called our design gallery. So if you do see this plant in the following landscapes pop up on any of your records, you can simply click on the record, and it will bump you into our design gallery. And so we'll take a look here at that in just a second, but just know that that's there, that we do have a back and forth between plants that are present in designs. We also show that they're there in our records. So the third section is our design gallery. And when we started this project and asked questions and did focus groups with master gardeners and homeowners and agents, one of the things that people said was, it's great to look at records of plants. I love looking at pictures of plants. I love learning about plants. But what I really want to be is inspired. I want you to show me landscapes. I want to see plants in combination. I want to see mature plants. I want to see hardscape elements. I want you to show me some things to get me excited about learning about more about the plants. And so we are really, really excited about this part of the toolbox, because I don't think any other plant databases really broach this topic and utilize this. So our design gallery is meant to inspire people and to show them many different types of gardens and let them browse and become inspired. We have kind of two different categories of gardens. One is a homeowner garden. So your backyard, your neighbor's backyard, gardener down the street, people's landscapes that they're actually planting in. And another is that we're showing demonstration gardens. And so this is the Asian garden, Japanese garden at J.C. Ralston Arboretum. And we do have, some other county gardens that we show. So, and we'll maybe get to see those in just a second, but we'd love to include more. So we started with 0 gardens. We're up to 119. we'd love to have way more than that, just to give people the option to see a lot of different choices. So again, when you click on Design Gallery, you're going to see this green bar appear, so you know you're in the Design Gallery section. You have a lot fewer options in the Design Gallery, but it works the exact same way. So maybe I want to plant a butterfly garden. Maybe in my landscape, I'm dealing with a walkway that's there. Maybe I've got my eye on a specimen small tree that maybe I want to add. Add to my landscape. So this really brings that number down to a more reasonable level as far as what you see. Once you kind of narrow it down to a more reasonable amount of gardens to look at, you can click, and it's very similar to our plant record. So you click and we've got a description that tells you about the garden, maybe a little bit of history, any features that you might not notice from the photos yourself. And then we include photos, and our goal is to show that seasonality. So this is a new, a new project. We haven't gone a complete full year with having the gallery up and running yet, but we're hoping to have seasonal photos that show the garden throughout the seasons, to let people know, if you think about it and plan for it, your garden can look great all year long, or even to show an example of, wow, this is it in the winter and I don't see a whole lot going on, so maybe I would choose to add something else. So we've got photos. They let people know the age of the garden, so there's that expectation of, well, it's going to be a little while before my garden looks like this. And then within each of the photos, you'll see there are links, and so these links take you then to the plant profile of the plants that are in those photos. So you can go back and forth if there's a plant that interests you. And if you really like it, there's another video. You can see this, the hydrangeas in a lot of gardens in the gallery. If you really like the photo, you can come down to this little blue button and click add. So we have kind of a shopping list of photos that you can then print out and take with you to the nursery, and that way you've got the plants that you're interested in, in using. So again, we've got a lot of great county gardens in here. We've got the Davidson County Garden. I know we've got a great Buncombe County Garden in here, and then we also have homeowner yards. So regular people's yards, inspiring people to plant. And making it achievable. So the other thing that I did want to mention, which I neglected to, so we'll just jump in right here and I'll show you really quick, is that all of the records do have a QR code. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the record, there's that ad again for the shopping list. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see there is a QR code here, and these are all very easy to use. You simply click on them, you save that image to your computer, and then you're able to use this QR code anywhere in your work as a master gardener to direct people. And if they scan this code with their phone, it will direct them right to this record. And the beauty of this is that code always works, the QR code always works, but if we add more photos or we add more information, it's automatically updated, and then when someone's scanning it, they're getting the latest and the greatest information. And so these codes can be used for plant sales, they can be used for demonstration garden signs, and so they're a really a great resource for using that. Okay. One other thing that I did want to mention is we do search by tags, or you can search by keywords or tags. So if there's something that you're really, you're not wanting to use the navigation bar for, or you have a specific keyword that you're looking for searching, you can use that. If the plant has been tagged that way, you can find it. So like pollinator plants, come up, you can see there's 690 plants that have been tagged as pollinator plant. So we're trying to do some keyword searches as well, because that is how some people do search. And then the tags also allow us to be very very specific with calling or curating lists. So the certified plant professionals, I can't say that, certified plant professionals asked us if we would be willing to tag our plants for them. So if you type in certified plant professionals CPP, you'll see that we have 660 plants that are tagged that way, and these are all the plants that are on their exam. So they have an identification exam, and they wanted their students to be able to study these photos and learn about the plants in a kind of an easy way. And we have them all here, so it does make it easy. We had a professor of Horticultural Science 302 ask us to tag his plants. So these are the 181 plants that are in his class. We, we're able to tag plants for plant sales or for demonstration gardens. If you have a garden in your county and you would like the plants that are in that garden, we could tag them with a specific tag, and then you could say, go and look on the plant toolbox, look at this tag. These are all the plants that are in our garden. And so it's a really great way to kind of make those curated lists and be functional in a lot of different settings. So, okay, and then we have recently added in a contact section. So this is for folks that might have an issue or something that they notice is not quite right, or they have a question that is related to the toolbox itself. Not necessarily a gardening question, but if there's something specific about the toolbox, we have just added in this kind of contact us now little form here. And so that's there. And then again, the help if you do run into any issues in the toolbox. We're constantly adding to this, and we're hoping to add some little video vignettes that kind of walk through some of the stuff I showed you today. I know it's really fast, but we do have some help documents here. Got how we determine things, and our glossary for terms and images. So check out the help section if you're feeling a little overwhelmed by it. But I think it's fairly intuitive, and the more time that you spend kind of clicking around, the easier it does get. So all right, I'm gonna turn it back over to Lucy.
Okay, so really exciting. I just pulled up the analytics, and we've had over 3 million hits in the last 12 months. So lots of people are using it, and that's great. This allows us to look at and you can see that, definitely people being at home over COVID.
Your audio is going in and out a little, Lucy. I don't know if you want to hide your video, maybe.
Hide my video. Okay.
I can hide it.
Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so we can find out all sorts of things with doing the analytics on this, which is really helpful to us in planning. One of the things that we can do is pull up what is it that people are searching for most frequently. What are the plants that they care about? And this is the list that is the current hot plant list that people are looking for more information on. Okay. So how can you use this? What can you do with the plant toolbox as an Extension Master Gardener volunteer? Kathleen, yeah, thanks. So yeah, thanks for the next one. So it hopefully will be a really for you at the help desk. So when you're working at your computer, you can look up really quickly and get answers for people who are on the phone about a specific plant or plants to recommend for a specific site. Next slide, Kathleen. When you look at the site, many of the plants will have on the left-hand column, once you get to a profile, it'll have, what are some of the common insect problems? What are some of the common disease problems? It'll have a paragraph about those insect and disease problems. So if you've got somebody who's calling about an issue with their dogwood, you can be scanning really quickly to see what are the most likely things that could be going on. If you click on any of these captions underneath a specific problem, that takes you to a publication that gives you more detailed information on it. So really quickly you can get to answers that are going to help you help people. It's also really easy to link from. So if you're doing an email, you can include a link to the information about the plant. You can also link them to the handbook with more details. But instead of having to write out a whole lot of information about a plant, you can just link them straight to the toolbox. That's great for two things. It helps you, it makes it easier for you, but it also introduces them to that as a resource for them to go directly to in the future. It's a great source for photos. We have thousands of photos that are Creative Commons licensed photos that you can use in articles and presentations and your plant sales and a variety of other ways. So you can find ones that are accurately identified and are readily available for you. They'll have the Creative Commons license, as Kathleen was showing you there. Yeah, that you can attach. It shows you who the photographer was and what the Creative Commons license is. This is an example of one way you can use the QR codes. If you have in your demonstration garden, your plant signs have the QR code attached to them. Somebody walking through your garden can just snap that QR code and it'll take them directly to all the information about that plant in the profile. So it makes your demonstration garden deeper in information that you can share with people. You can also use those on plant sales. So if you're doing signs for your plant sale, you can codes on the plant sales that can help people just make good choices about getting the right plant, what they need. And they can be used in a variety of ways. It's mobile friendly, so it works on your phone. You can show the, there's a little straight lines across that the arrows are pointing to. The one on the right is more, so that's going to give you menu options to be able to search and do it. And then the navigation buttons are in the white line where Kathleen's pointing now. You just click that and it opens up the navigation panel. So it's really efficient. All that stuff is hidden unless you're needing to use it at the moment. But you see it pulls up the plants and the images and everything. So that's great. Kathleen showed you the demonstration gallery, but this is a great way for you to promote your demonstration garden. You can have images of your garden, description of your garden, and suddenly it becomes searchable, and it can link to all the plants that are in your garden right from this spot. So hopefully it can become a powerful tool for you in expanding the ways that your demonstration garden is benefiting you and your clients. Okay.
So I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank, I see some of you guys in here now, just a huge thank you to all of the volunteers that have worked on this project thus far. For those of you that are unaware, we did take our old plant database and transferred the information record by record into this new database, which was an excruciating process, but we had an amazing team of volunteers that helped us with that transformation. We've had volunteers that have helped us with researching. We've added over 1,300 new records, and it grows every day. We keep adding more plants, and we've had volunteers that help us do the research to fill out all of those data fields that you saw. As you saw, we collect a lot of information, and that requires that we have boots on the ground, really thrumming the resources to find research-based information and sites, and that will give us great records that are in there. And then we've had amazing photographers as well. So those of you that have been out there snapping photos of your plants in different stages, in different times of year, you know, thank you for being willing to do that and sticking with it and naming your photos properly so we can upload them. And then we've had great groups that have pulled together and given us those demonstration gardens and helped us to build our gallery out. So we are in great debt to all of those master gardeners that have been a part of this project. There is no way that we would have been able to come as far as we have without your help. So so thank you. That being said, this project is still ongoing. As Lucy mentioned, we we have the ability to help direct people to other resources, and our next focus is going to be looking at how we can integrate IPM better into the toolbox and educate people about common problems that are found, and rather than find every plant that's affected by aphids and write about all the management strategies. To help with that, we can simply direct people to a publication, but that takes time and developing those resources and also linking them out. That's going to be a huge thing. We still are working on filling out those records, getting all of the data into every record. We're still adding photographs. We're still adding galleries. So we would love to have volunteers, folks that are photographers or copy editors. We need proofreaders, folks that are good at research. We're still looking for folks to help out. It's a work at your own pace, and obviously from home. So it's a COVID friendly activity, and you can contribute in myriad ways. We would just ask that you just check with your county extension agent and double check that they give the stamp of approval, that they're okay with you volunteering on the toolbox. But we would love to welcome some more folks to help us really really launch the database into new heights in 2021. So our future priorities are enhancing that search capability, making sure that our identify a plant works properly, because every plant in the database has been updated. So we're really focused on getting all of those records fleshed out, and it is challenging as we add new plants all the time. Then those are more plants that we have to get the data for. So it is a challenging process, but we're working on it. We would love to add more videos. We've got, like I said, just around 700 right now, but we would love to add more videos. We've got a lot of really good feedback from folks about the videos. They like the videos. They love seeing our agents talking about plants, and so we would love to add more of those as we move along. Adding in those IPM publications and links out to really help people get the gist. And then native alternatives. So if you're dealing with a problem plant, we have the capability of saying, here's a native alternative to this problem plant, and linking folks out to plants that are better choices, or similar but less problematic plants. Maybe it's not a native, but it's a better plant than the one that you're looking at, and we could direct you to that one. So all of that does take time and resources to research and then to implement within the database itself, and we're looking for help with that. And then copy editing as well. So we're moving towards the point where we're ready to do a kind of an overhaul, getting all the information in, and then doing a proofread of everything to make sure that everything is consistent across the board. So again, this is the URL. I encourage you to bookmark it. Know that we are still under construction. Where Lucy shared that we've had 3 million views since the database launched last July, which is pretty incredible considering we have done basically zero zero publicity about the toolbox to this point. We haven't wanted to, parade it out in front of everyone till we were, we had it in better shape and we had the records more fleshed out. But yeah, people have come anyway, so we're really excited. Just know that we are still working on it. It's not, it's definitely not a complete project yet. But if you are interested or you have questions about anything, please email me after this. And I think we have a few minutes for some questions, if there were any in the chat.
Yeah, we do have a few minutes. So I see Lucy's been responding to a lot of the questions in the chat, but there was a question about if it said it was native, did it mean it was native to North Carolina?
Yes, native to North Carolina.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And seems like a lot of them, there were some questions about pond plants, and Lucy's added a link to that. So it's probably a great time to remind everybody that you can download the chat, because there's been lots of great links shared in the chat. If you go to the bottom of the chat box where you would enter a message and you see the little bubble with 3 dots and click on that, it opens up some options, one of which is to save the chat, and that'll save it on your device. So you can capture those links, or you can just copy and paste them out of the chat. I know, Kathleen, one thing that we've discussed before is how you decide which plant name to use, because we know plant names change sometimes, and taxonomists sometimes split things up, and other times they lump things together. So what is the reference for the plant toolbox for your plant names?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So you may find, as you're searching, like Charlotte mentioned, you may find that the name that we use might look a little different than the one maybe you're used to seeing. And so unless we have information from one of our NC State sources, so we have gotten, database and records from our own sources, we are actually looking to Q, which is an herbarium and overall plant amazing taxonomy resource in England, and they have very up-to-date and accurate names based on the current taxonomy. And as you guys know, with genetic testing, it does end up changing on us. And so we have gone through and verified that the names are the most accepted name at this point in the horticulture world. But as I showed you before with the synonyms, even if a name, it may be a synonym name, you will still get to the record. So if we have it in the record as a synonym, even if you type in the old name, you'll still get to that. You'll still get to that record. It might be like, oh, that name looks a little different, but that's just because we're following Q's lead. They've got a lot of great information about origin of the plant, and then records of the synonyms that have been used for things. So that is where we get those.
Excellent. I also see there was a question about how to print a profile, but Lucy has dropped a link into the chat with instructions on how to print a profile. So folks can check that out if you're interested in printing some of the information. There's a question, will there be a feature to help people source a plant to purchase?
So that's an interesting question. When we do get that question, we let them know that we're not a source of plants, that we're simply a source of information about plants. And then we have directed them at this point. I think, Charlotte, you had shared it with me before, and I'm trying to remember the exact name, but it's a website that shows the nurseries.
I put it in the chat, Kathleen.
Okay, thank you. A site that shows the nurseries, and you can put in, I believe, maybe your zip code or maybe your county. I'm not sure. Have to look at it again, but it does show you which nurseries carry which plants. So.
Yes, that's right. Those are nurseries that are wholesale nurseries. So it means you know, typically if it's available from a wholesale nursery, then garden centers can get it. Some of those wholesale nurseries will sell directly to the public, others won't. So you would definitely want to contact them first before just showing up. But you can always ask your garden center too, local garden center, if they can order certain plants. And there was a question about the scientific name source, which was Kew Gardens, K-E-W, and I dropped a link in the chat. And here's the question about if you're looking at identifying plants with a photo download, are you looking at that possibility to add? People could add a photo and it behind the scenes identify the plant for them and give them the answer.
Yeah. That is something that I know that has been bantered about. I know that that Extension IT has pretty much washed its hands of us at this point after creating this database from scratch. So they might not be quite ready for you know, for any new features, but maybe in a few years. I think what we need is a really great database of photos, which is what we are working on. So I think for those types of features to work, you have to have a lot of source photos that you're comparing the photo that someone uploads to. So so it certainly might be a possibility in the future.
Yeah, and there are other apps out there that can do that as well. I haven't personally used any of them, but I know we've discussed them before in some of our plants, pests, and pathogens, and folks have shared some. So if you know of one of those, you could certainly welcome to drop it in the chat and share with everyone. There's a lot, of course, compliments on how amazing the Plant Toolbox is and how people are using it. And I'm not seeing any more questions, but I guess there was a question that that came in by email a few days ago, is how the plants that are marked invasive, what is the reference for marking a plant invasive?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we're actually, it is challenging to name a plant as invasive because it's a term that gets bantered about a lot in plant descriptions. If something is weedy or aggressive, sometimes people use the word invasive, and that isn't necessarily the case. The plants that are in the toolbox right now that are listed as invasive come from Chris Moorman's site, and so he's a professor at NC State in forestry, and so the ones that are in there right now are from his list, but we are looking at these references. We've sent out a query to our colleagues about how did they feel about us listing things as invasive, and using some of these other sources as a way to list something. And so far, we haven't heard from everybody, but so far the consensus is that you know, if we err on the side of listing something as invasive, that's probably better than not listing it at all. That way, because we can then direct people to a better choice. So if one of the renowned resources does list it as invasive, we will likely look to listing them that way. So these are some of the resources that we presented to them as you know, as possible lists. And so that's where we are now. But right now, the list is from our own in-house list of invasive plants. So it's still up in the air a bit, but we're moving forward with that question.
All right. So just, you know, again, it's a lot of appreciation coming in, so I think we'll close it out with I'll just share from the chat from Rippy Hendricks, because I think it certainly sums up how we all feel that this is an absolutely amazing tool, and thank you for the team's hard work and ongoing hard work. So we really appreciate all you do and everybody who's involved in the Plant Toolbox. It is an amazing tool that will just keep getting more and more valuable as a resource for all of us. And I think that brings us up to 11 o'clock, so it's time to switch over to our bolos, our Be on the Lookout. So I'm going to hand it off to Matt and Mike. See who wants to go first. Let us know what we need to be on the lookout for.
Sure. Thanks, Charlotte. I think we agreed that I'll go first. So I will begin sharing my screen. Oh, hold on. Okay. Everybody see? Assuming?
Yep.
Yeah, yes.
Yep,
Great.
I see them.
Well, hello everyone. It's getting a little cooler now. Who knows if this is just first fall, as some people online have stated, where we may get some hot temperatures still, but it's getting cool. And so the critter activity is out there, but it's going to start slowing down. So we've got lots of things still out and about. Lots of insects and spiders and other critters are going to be at their biggest size, kind of winding down, probably already mated and laid eggs, the ones that are overwintering as eggs. But basically, things are going to be out there. I've talked about a few of those things the last session. You're going to start to see some caterpillars. There are actually some caterpillars, or begin to see the larger caterpillars at the end of the season, some of them already pupating. Others, there are a few caterpillar types that are actually going to overwinter as well and begin activities in the spring. But in general, there's nothing really specific about this time of year as far as things newly coming out, except for I need to obviously mention when things cool down, we're going to start getting some home invaders. So I'll probably mention this again next month because this will continue for the next couple months. But several types of insects overwinter as adults. And so they migrate to sites to overwinter, to hibernate. Usually that's in nature, that's going to be under bark, in logs, places like that that are nice and sheltered. But we provide very nice shelters for bugs and other insects. And of course, people aren't very happy about that. But the stink bugs are going to be one of them. So here's some brown marmorated stink bugs hiding out in some window blinds, some shades in the windows. These were from my house, my basement, and just coming indoors. So you'll start to see some stink bugs entering homes. There are also some other types of bugs. The kudzu bugs are going to start to congregate in shelters. These are groups of them on trees. And also boxelder bugs can be a common sight in the fall when they move into homes. And these bugs are very distinct in that they are black with these red edges. Now, not a true bug, but ladybugs also may tend to do this. So adult ladybugs can come inside in the hundreds or thousands, can be a big nuisance, even though they're very pretty. They can even sometimes bite and leave stains on skin and carpets or upholstery. So they will sometimes enter homes. And also wasps. So the social wasps, especially the paper wasps and the hornets, their colonies are winding down. They've probably started or are finishing up producing males that will go out and mate with the females. These females that are mated are basically going to be queens for next year, and they need to find a site to overwinter, and when they emerge in the spring, they'll start building their new nests. So we oftentimes see these critters coming indoors to hibernate. Like I said, next year you'll be seeing them, of course, in the spring coming out of hibernation and becoming active. So you may not see them all coming indoors, but you may see them leaving and vice versa. But these are some of the common ones. And basically, they're difficult to actually control. The only way to prevent them from coming indoors is to make sure your windows and doors are well sealed. You've got cracks and crevices sealed in your home. These prevent points of entry. And if they do come in the home, especially things in hundreds or thousands, using a vacuum cleaner, just vacuum them up, dispose of the vacuum bag or freeze it and then dispose of it. This can help take them out of the environment, but using chemicals is really not suggested because there's really no target area and you'd have to make sure that they actually come in contact with a lot of these poisons. So basically prevention by sealing up the house and kind of collecting these critters that come in by hand or otherwise can help remove them. I've also heard for stink bugs that if you keep the house dark at night and leave a light over a pan of soapy water, they'll often fly to the light and got knocked down into the water and drown. But you know, nothing is guaranteed, and just keep an eye out for these critters. And if you see them, you may just collect them and throw them back outside, and hopefully they'll find a nice natural place to hibernate rather than your house. And that's all I have for the bolos right now. Again, the season is winding up, is wrapping up, and so we don't have a lot of new activity. Things are just kind of winding down. Okay.
All right, thank you, Matt. Let Mike share his screen. I will share a few years ago, it was later in the fall, like November, December, my husband was replacing some metal on a roof and he pulled off a piece and there were just hundreds and hundreds of wasps under it. And thank goodness it was cold. It was so cold they were stunned and they just kind of rolled off, you know, fell off. But that was quite a sight just to see those hundreds and hundreds of wasps underneath the tin roof.
Yep. And I didn't mention it, but some flies also will cluster. Well, they're cluster flies especially, but some other flies will overwinter as adults too. So basically, any insect that overwinters as an adult is going to try and find somewhere to hibernate. And we build lots of little cracks and crevices and attics and things like that that are great for them to do so. And I'll answer some of the chat questions in the chat for people.
Oh, thank you. All right, Mike, you're up.
All right, that's me. Excuse me, clear my throat and share my screen here. While I'm doing that, I want to also put in my own thank you to Lucy and Kathleen and that whole team. In fact, my wife and I were just on the site last night looking for some ideas and things, and one of the comments in there saved us from putting a tree that might have cracked our driveway in a location where we were considering it. So that's great. We'll have to check out the landscape gallery. We didn't know about that. And in fact, Betty and I were just lamenting last night about the J.C. Ralston Arboretum being closed, so we can't go there for inspiration. So this is wonderful. All right, let me see here. Hopefully you can see the first slide here, our tree and shrub bolos. Actually, that's not the first.
Looks good.
I wanted to go back. That should have been, so I wanted to start with a featured bolo here. And this is a photo that Matt took. He wins the prize this year for being the first person to find the fruiting bodies, which are our fancy word for any fungal structure that produces spores. And in the case of Armillaria, they are true mushrooms. And these little clusters of honey-colored mushrooms will be coming out about this time of year now from stumps and from roots near trees. So if you see them, then there's obviously some kind of problem going on. It may be in a root of a tree that's already dead or a stump of a tree that's already removed, but it can also indicate an active infection of that tree by this fungus. Unfortunately, it's not always going to be there. So you can have a tree with Armillaria root rot going on, but no fruiting bodies formed in the fall. But if you do see them, then it is a good warning sign. And another one I want to highlight as a featured bolo is the boxwood blight, which we've been seeing coming in the clinic. And just a reminder that the three symptoms that are typical of boxwood blight are the chocolate colored leaf spots, the dark streaks on green twigs, and the defoliation. So really, if you see any two of these three in combination, then you can be pretty confident you have boxwood blight. But we would be happy to do the laboratory confirmation and actually look for the fungus that's responsible for that. So in list form are be on the lookouts for the month of October. As always, improper planting, things that are coming in, being installed in the landscape with J roots or that had been with the roots running around in circles in the pot and that weren't properly treated when they were put into the ground. So these kind of things will be causing issues for trees and shrubs long after they're planted, can lead to girdling roots and so forth. So always consider that as a possibility when someone is contacting you about a problem with a tree or a shrub. On many hosts, we can see the symptoms of Phytophthora root rot and Armillaria root rot really any time of year in terms of general decline, wilting, browning, dieback, and so forth. And this is our high season for powdery mildew on many different kinds of plants, such as oaks, for example, you'll see quite a bit on. Boxwood blight, I had mentioned in detail a moment ago. And Entomosporium leaf spot on Indian hawthorn and on any photinias, red tip photinias that are still left in the landscape. You can see that photograph in the far right, upper right there, the bright red spots that develop a little kind of gray blister center where the spores are produced. That's very variable depending on the susceptibility of the particular cultivar of Indian hawthorn. Cercospora, I should read, sorry, Cercospora leaf spot on hydrangea is going to be ubiquitous wherever we've got the hydrangea macrophylla in our North Carolina landscapes. And it seems to get pretty bad in the fall before the leaves are lost. And finally, another large fruiting body that will be appearing on the bases of many oak trees is Pseudo-Inonotus dryadius, the weeping polypore. So at this time of year, I haven't seen any fresh ones yet, but it comes out looking like a loaf of bread rising in the oven. But it'll produce in the cool mornings little droplets of liquid. So it has the common name of the weeping polypore, and that's helpful too. So you'll see this at the base on the buttress roots of especially oak trees. And it is a sign that there is decay going on in the wood, which may not lead to crown symptoms for quite a while, but it can cause structural loss of structural integrity, and you can get trees with wind throw when they've got enough wood decay going on from this fungus. All right, let me see. I have not yet figured out how to make the chat box appear so that I can keep an eye on it at all times.
When you're presenting,
There was a,
up at the top is where you would go to get it. Up at the top to the right.
Okay, I'm looking at it now. I thought there was a way to pin it to the, but okay.
I don't, yeah, I don't think that works when you're sharing your screen, Mike. It works when you're not in screen share, that you can pin your chat to your Zoom window.
Okay, so the three symptoms of boxwood blight, to repeat those, yes, it's the brown leaf spots, kind of a chocolate color to them. They sit when they're young. Then dark streaks on what would otherwise be green twigs and defoliation. And bolo, that's our be on the lookout. That's a term we borrowed from the government to refer to the things that you should be on the watch for in the coming month. And again, for those who are new, in these bolo only sessions, Matt and I present the things to look for. And unfortunately, the time format doesn't allow us to be able to go into any details about their biology or management. Although, of course, Matt was kind enough to tell us about some of the things to do for the home invading adult hibernating insects. All right, moving along. For the flowers, our liriopes in the landscape, some people consider them a flower, others just a ground cover, but we'll be getting anthracnose on the leaf tips. That is to be expected, and that's why you give it a nice haircut, very short during the late winter, so that you don't have the fungus there in large quantities to reinfect in the spring. If you have any zinnias left in your flower garden, you may be seeing alternaria leaf spot and also spots on the petals. And as you buy your pansies and violas for the winter color, be sure to check for these pollens that could come from the from the nursery or the greenhouse. So Phytophthora root and crown rot, that should be fairly easy to spot. They'll kind of flop over because they're rotting at the very base of the stem there. Pythium root rot would make them small and unthrifty. Yeah, I'm not sure what you would see really as far as symptoms there. Wilting, unthriftiness, but the tricky one is the black root rot, where it tends to cause yellowing, and you want to kind of take one or two of those cells and pop them out and make sure that the roots are clean and don't have that infection that you want to add to your flower garden. I see on the question here, does it help to clean up fallen leaves from under hydrangeas that have shown Cercospora and leaf spot? Yeah, Cercospora, and the reason the "and" is there is because earlier in the year I had Cercospora and Coronespora leaf spots. So that would probably be a good idea, yeah, not to mulch with those leaves so that they're there in the spring. I don't know the question though about neem oil, whether it would work for the Cercospora leaf spot on the hydrangeas. Going into the vegetable garden, any squash, pumpkin, gourd that are left in the vegetable garden are probably going to have tremendous amount of powdery mildew this time of year. And as the cole crops start going in, such as this kale that's pictured in the lower right, you want to be very careful that you're not introducing black rot, which is a bacterial disease, classically forming these V-shaped lesions, yellowing in this case, on the margins of the leaves. So that's something to avoid when you're planting. It can also cause the veins to, I almost said the veins to go black. The veins to go black on those leaves. So you have to look out for that as you're shopping for your transplants. Another cole crop disease that could show up would be white spot on turnip. Any beans that are left? Beans are the giving tree of the vegetable garden. They'll use their last ounce of strength to give you one more bean. But this time of year, you may be seeing the Cercospora leaf spot that we've been talking about in recent months. And of course, on basil, downy mildew will still be a problem. Okay, a question there about to home compost zinnia with the Armillaria petal spot. I would not do that. I've never done a survey, but I don't suspect that most home compost piles reach the temperature high enough to be able to inactivate these pathogens. So as a general rule, you do not want to put anything that's diseased from the garden into the compost pile. And I'll let Matt catch the flea beetle question in a little bit here. Finally, for turf grasses, which I will again admit is not my area of expertise, but based on the information that I have from people, namely Lee Butler, who are experts in that. In October, some of the things to be able to watch out for are fairy ring on any turf. That's really any season of the year. Large patch on our warm season turf grasses. As the warm season grasses start to feel the stress, then they're going to have more problems. One of them being this disease called large patch, leaf spot, bipolaris and drexlera leaf spots on bluegrasses and Bermuda grass, and rust on multiple different turf species. And I guess just another public lament that we won't, something not to be able to look forward to in October this year is going to be the State Fair and the wonderful presentations of competitive gardens and things there in the back corner. But hopefully for 2021, we'll be back at it there. All right, if there are no other questions for me, I'll turn it back to Matt to ask or answer the question about flea beetles.
Sure, yeah, I am. Okay, so flea beetles and brassicas. I don't know exactly whether they'll be out. Let me search something real quick.
I'll tell you what, Mike, if you want to stop your screen share, I can start sharing, and while Matt looks up that answer. And we can come back for that in just a minute after we look at our weed of the month. Does that sound good, Matt?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so weed of the month. This is very much a transition time for weeds. As Matt said, insects are winding down, and we know in North Carolina weeds never wind down. They've just changed from one season of weeds to the other. So that's definitely where we are now, and you can see both for cool season and warm season weeds. This is for annuals, but we do have cool season, warm season perennials too. So for our warm season weeds, they're just in full bloom. They're shedding seed. They're ensuring the next generation. And then for our cool season weeds, they are just really tiny things right now, or they're just germinating from seeds that were left behind in the spring. So very much a transition period for weeds. And our weed of the month this year, though, is a little bit unusual in that it can be found pretty much year-round. So this wood sorrel is a perennial. It's a cool season perennial in that it prefers to grow in those cooler times of the year, but especially when we have milder summers, or especially more regular rainfall, it could just be here year-round, and you tend to find it. To look at the leaf, you might would think it is a legume. You might would think it was a type of clover, but it's not. It is in the Oxalidaceae family, so the Oxalis family or wood sorrel family. And this species particular, Oxalis stricta, has a lemony flavor, and sometimes people like to eat the weeds, and this is one that you can eat, but it does contain oxalic acid, which you don't want to eat too much of that, especially if you have kidney stone problems. And you can find it pretty much anywhere in the garden, dry or moist sites. It'll tolerate poor soils. It'll tolerate high pH or alkaline soils. It'll grow in sun or shade. It does prefer sun and fairly moist soils, but once you have it, you tend to have it for a really long time because it spreads by rhizomes and stolons. And it can expel its seed up to 16 feet away from the mother plant. So it can really spread. And it expels those seed from these explosive seed capsules, which look a little bit like missiles. So when you're out weeding, you definitely want to get this one, especially if you see seed pods on it, or hopefully before it gets seed pods on it, because you want to prevent those seeds from spreading. There is another very similar species, the creeping wood sorrel. These often occur together. The creeping wood sorrel has the purple leaves, and it tends to be a little more ground hugging. Otherwise, they're both very similar with these yellow flowers. You see in this picture of the yellow wood sorrel, the leaves are kind of folded down, and that's typical of what these plants do at night. So the leaves fold up at night and then open back up in the daytime to photosynthesize. There are great profiles for both of these in the plant toolbox, so you can check those out and learn more. Also, I'll mention these are both actually native, so sometimes our native plants can have weedy tendencies and can spread and be in the garden in places we don't want. So not all of our weeds are introduced from other parts of the world. And as far as management for these wood sorrels, it's really key to remember, they are perennials and they are spreading by their roots as well as seed. So that kind of keys you into some management practices, and prevention is really critical. Both of these wood sorrels or oxalis are pretty common in nursery plants, and when you're shopping, not only do you want to look for disease symptoms, look for weeds that are coming up in the containers. And if you see anything and you must buy that plant, make sure to thoroughly remove any weeds in the root system of any weeds before you put it in your landscape. And then keep a close eye on those plants, because often there are seeds there in the potting mix too. So you'll often get this coming in on new landscape plants. So keep an eye on those and pull any weeds as soon as you see them so they don't get established. And that's the real key with hand weeding, especially for perennial weeds that have these spreading roots, is you want to get them really young before those root systems spread out, because if you just pull off the top on most of these perennial weeds that have a spreading root system, they'll just grow back from the roots that are left behind. If you have larger established weeds, you would want to try to dig them out using a little hand trowel or something. They typically are fairly shallow rooted, but it is a spreading root system. So you want to dig around, try to get all the roots you can find, and prevent seeding, so especially get them, if you see them in bloom, go ahead and pull them. If they have seed pods on them, pull them carefully, so hopefully you don't explode those seed pods. And take them, and take them out of the garden. Don't just pull them up and leave them there on the ground, because if the seeds reach a certain stage of maturity and you just leave the plant there, they will continue to mature and can still spread in the garden. Getting them young, because they are really difficult to remove once established, is key again. Mulch can help with new plants establishing from seed, because the seeds do need light to germinate, but it's not a preventative for root spreading. And that's true for, again, most of our perennial weeds. Mulch will not stop the ones that are propagating by root pieces, but they can help prevent new ones from germinating from seed, especially for things like oxalis, that the seed need to be at the surface and exposed to light to germinate. And then herbicides, of course, as with all weeds, they're most effective when the weed is young and small. And as with most perennial weeds, you do want something that's going to move into the root system. So non-selective products containing glyphosate are typically what's recommended as most effective for this. You just have to be very careful with your application if you're not able to get control with hand weeding and mulching. There's more tips for control in turf grass and in landscape settings in some fact sheets, some extension fact sheets. I'll drop these in the chat. Get the chat back open. And oops, I'll have to pick that up in just a minute. I thought I already had the link there. And so with that, we'll move on and take a look at our plant of the month and come back to some questions that are in the chat. But for our plant of the month, I just want to point out, when we're thinking about especially pollinators and feeding things that rely on nectar and pollen, you want to have things in bloom all throughout the year. And I thought this was a great chart, kind of laying out different plants, this one's specific to native plants, laying out what is in bloom throughout the seasons. And it's very helpful to take the plants that are in your landscape and putting them on a similar chart to make sure you do have multiple things in bloom throughout the season, to make sure there is a food source available for pollinators. And this time of year, especially as we get late in the season, these late season nectar sources can be really critical to build up strength for bee colonies for the winter. And this is a great one. All of our goldenrods are good for late season blooms, but the one we're going to focus on is the fireworks goldenrod, because it is a good one for landscapes. And I see I did miss the N in goldenrod, so I'll correct that spelling mistake. But overall, we have over 40 species of goldenrod native to North Carolina. You see they're in bloom all over the roadsides right now. Many of them produce long rhizomes, so they're fine for natural areas, or especially if you have large restoration areas, but maybe not something you want to put in your landscape, because they can quickly fill up any space where they're added. And that's where this particular variety and cultivar comes in. The Solidago rugosa is one of our native species. It's known as the rough or wrinkle-leaved goldenrod, because it does have a wrinkly leaf. And this variety, fireworks, was selected by the North Carolina Botanical Gardens. It was found in a population near Wilson, North Carolina, and was introduced by niche gardens into the trade. And it is really a great plant for the landscape, because it stays a little smaller. It only gets to be about 3 to 4 feet high, and it is a slow spreader. So it grows in a similar habit to things like Rudbeckia goldstrom, some of these plants that just kind of creep along, but they stay in this kind of solid mat, which is nice. You can divide them, say, every 3 to 4 years. You can share them or move them to other sites of the garden, but they don't just pop up everywhere. It blooms August through September, even some years into October. And the Chicago Botanical Gardens a few years ago did a trial of many different Solidagos or goldenrods, and this was their top-rated variety just because of its performance and attraction and just its wonderful features with these beautiful sprays of golden flowers, which are very well named fireworks because they do look like fireworks just shooting off all over the place. Here is another picture. You can see just kind of a mass planting can be really effective. It's also nice as a single plant. And one thing goldenrods really get a bad rap for is hay fever and allergies. And they are insect pollinated. So anything you see would have the colorful petals, or the colorful petals are there to attract insects for insect pollination. So their pollen tends to be heavier and not an airborne pollen. And it's really those plants that we don't even notice are blooming that have this very airborne pollen because they're wind pollinated. Those are the plants that really contribute to hay fever and to allergies. And goldenrod has the misfortune of blooming at the same time as ragweed, which is our big contributor to hay fever in the fall. And these are the blooms that we're looking at here. So you see, you wouldn't even notice it. There's no petals, there's nothing to really draw your attention. So ragweed is our fall blooming hay fever plant, but because goldenrod is so showy, it often gets blamed for that. So you can go out and defend goldenrod and plant it in your garden. And you will actually often see on social media and different sites a picture that is identified as ragweed to actually be goldenrod, but the real ragweed has these very divided leaves and just these very inconspicuous flowers. And I see a couple of questions about, is it deer resistant? It's not one of their absolute favorites, but they will munch on it, especially if there's not a lot of other things around. And a question about, would it help stabilize the slope? It does have those spreading roots, but it's not really deep rooted. I guess a lot of it would depend on the nature of the slope and how steep it was. You know, for steeper slopes, you'd be better off with a woody plant that has a spreading root system, or grasses, things that have really deep roots. And just a few more tips for growing goldenrod. It will thrive in sun. It'll grow in part shade. I'd favor more sun over more shade for sure. And it'll tolerate moist to well-drained soils and sand or clay. So it's pretty adaptable. And it is a good choice for rain gardens. It can tolerate some brief flooding. So it does well in those kind of sites. And as we talked about, because it has that spreading mat type of habit, you can divide it every 3 or 4 years. And then from an ecological standpoint, the ecological value it's going to bring to your landscape is amazing. Goldenrods attract many, many, many species of butterflies, bees, pollinators, and beneficial insects. So it is definitely just a plant to observe how many things will visit it. It's right up there with pycnanthemum or the mountain mints for the diversity of insects that visit and use this plant. So just a wonderful plant to have in the garden. And again, bringing that late nectar source. And in addition, songbirds are reported to eat the seeds. So you might not want to cut it back too early. Just let it hang out and let the seeds be there for birds to come along and take advantage of. So that is our weed and plant of the month. I was going to check and see if we had any more questions in the chat, but I know, Matt, you had the question you were looking up about the flea beetles. So I don't know if you wanted to share that.
Sure. So yeah, you really shouldn't be seeing much adult insect activity or much insect activity at all when it starts to cool down completely and become winter. Really, for flea beetles, especially on brassicans, what you're going to want to do is make sure that the weeds around there and leaf litter might be tidied up and removed, because that's actually where the adult flea beetles will overwinter. But otherwise, you really shouldn't be seeing much. Their main activity is going to be in the spring, and that's when they're going to be affecting those plants most. So.
Excellent. So I just dropped a bunch of links in the chat for the plants we've just looked at, and I saw there was a question about the that chart. So that I did not have that link ready to put in the chat, but I will send it out in the follow-up email. And of course, remember we were talking about you can save the chat locally on your device, just go to those 3 little dots that are down there in where you would enter your message and click on that, and you'll get an option to save the chat. But with that, we really appreciate all of our speakers today and everybody participating, and encourage you to mark your calendar for next month. October 27th will be our season finale. We'll wrap up the 2020 season, and we will be featuring pest and plant disease issues. And I know Matt and Mike will have something, as always, exciting planned for us. And until we meet again, we wish you all a very happy gardening. And thank you all. I see lots of compliments in the chat, and thank you all for putting up with the glitches. We had more glitches than usual today, but things finally got straightened out. I don't know if it was a Zoom thing or what was happening, but things straightened out in the end.
Well, thanks, Charlotte, and thanks, Lucy and Kathleen, for your great presentation.
Sure, it was fun being here with you guys.
Yes, thank you all. Be well, everybody.